Day 0 hits hard. The streak's gone 30 days, maybe 60, erased in minutes. Guilt floods in fast. His chest tightens. That voice starts. You failed again. Why even try? Most guys spiral here, falling twice more within 48 hours. The body craves what it just got, brain wiring screaming for repeat. But here's what changes everything. The next 72 hours aren't about shame. They're about strategic reset. Get this window right, and one slip becomes data, not defeat. After a relapse, the body enters a vulnerable window. The brain's reward system gets disrupted, stress hormones spike, and old patterns try to reassert themselves. But here's the critical part. The first 72 hours determine whether this becomes a full slide backward or just a single step off the path. This protocol turns that window into a launchpad. Hours 0-24, the detox and mindset reset. The first day is about stopping the spiral. When a guy breaks his streak, guilt floods in. That guilt can trigger another slip within hours, creating a cycle. The move here is immediate physical intervention. He steps into a cold shower. Not warm turning cold, straight cold. 60 seconds minimum. The shock hits his system like a reset button. Cold exposure triggers a massive dopamine spike, up to 250% above baseline, that lasts for hours. This isn't about punishment. It's about giving the brain a clean dose of feel-good chemicals without the behavior he's trying to avoid. Next comes the journal. Not vague thoughts, specific prompts. What triggered this? What was I feeling 5 minutes before? Where was I, and what time was it? The answers create a trigger map. Most guys discover patterns they never consciously noticed. Stress from work at 9 p.m., boredom on Sunday afternoons, loneliness after social media. Day 1 is also about hydration and nutrition. The body just burned through zinc and magnesium, minerals critical for hormone production and nervous system function. He loads up spinach and pumpkin seeds for magnesium, oysters or lean beef for zinc. Water intake doubles. This isn't mystical. Dehydration amplifies brain fog and irritability, making relapse more likely. Hours 24-48. Physical recovery. Day 2 shifts to burning off the restless energy that piles up after a slip. The urge to relapse again often peaks here because the body craves that dopamine hit it just experienced. The answer is intense exercise. Not a casual walk, a 20-minute high-intensity interval training session. Sprints in the park, burpees in the bedroom, anything that spikes the heart rate above 85% max for short bursts. Vigorous exercise reduces cravings by up to 30% and improves mood through endorphin release. It also regulates the stress response, calming the nervous system that's been on high alert. A guy laces up his running shoes at dawn. The park is empty. He sprints between 2 trees, walks back, sprints again. 10 rounds. His lungs burn. His legs shake. By round 7, the urge that woke him up at 5 a.m. has dissolved into sweat on the pavement. He walks home, shoulders loose, mind clear. Trigger avoidance becomes non-negotiable during this phase. If late-night phone use was the trigger, the phone stays in another room after 8 p.m. If it was being alone in the apartment, he schedules calls with friends or works from a coffee shop. Environment shapes behavior more than willpower ever will. Hours 48-72. Rebuilding momentum. By day 3, the nervous system starts to recalibrate. Stress hormones drop back to normal. The brain begins strengthening new pathways while weakening the old ones, neuroplasticity in action. This is where momentum rebuilds. He returns to the habits that built the original streak: morning routine, accountability check-ins, evening reflection. But now, he adds the lessons from the trigger map. If Sunday boredom was the crack in the foundation, Sunday gets structured: gym at 10 a.m., meal prep at noon, phone call with family at 3 p.m. The critical mindset shift happens here. One slip doesn't erase progress. A guy who maintained 30 days and slipped once hasn't lost 30 days of brain changes, hormonal benefits, or self-knowledge. He's lost one day. The recovery protocol turns that one day into data, not defeat. Missing a single instance doesn't significantly impact long-term success. What matters is the speed of return. Guys who implement a structured recovery protocol within 72 hours show relapse rates 40% lower than those who don't. The protocol isn't just about bouncing back. It's about bouncing forward with better systems in place. He sits at his desk on day 3. The journal is open, triggers identified, exercise schedule set, nutrition dialed in. The shame that arrived on day 0 has transformed into clarity. He doesn't feel superhuman. He feels equipped. That's the difference. Why the 72-hour protocol works. The tactics from the first 72 hours aren't arbitrary. They target specific biological systems that get disrupted during a relapse. When ejaculation occurs, the brain experiences a sudden chemical shift. Dopamine, the feel-good chemical tied to motivation and reward, drops temporarily while prolactin surges. Prolactin creates that post-orgasm fatigue and reduces drive. These changes happen within minutes and can persist for hours. This chemical dip is why guilt and low energy hit so hard immediately after a slip. Here's where the cold shower tactic becomes powerful. Cold exposure triggers a massive dopamine release, increases up to 250% above baseline, that lasts for hours. This isn't a quick spike and crash like the dopamine from the behavior being avoided. It's a sustained elevation that stabilizes mood and motivation. The body gets what it's craving, a dopamine boost, without reinforcing the unwanted habit. The autonomic nervous system, which controls stress and calm responses, also resets through cold exposure. Heart rate variability improves, signaling the shift from stress mode to recovery mode. Exercise works through a parallel mechanism. High-intensity movement floods the system with endorphins, natural mood elevators that reduce cravings, but it also accelerates synaptic pruning, the brain's process of weakening unused pathways. Every hour that passes without repeating the relapse behavior, the neural pathway associated with that habit gets slightly weaker. Exercise speeds this process, while simultaneously strengthening pathways tied to discipline and delayed gratification. Guys who engage in vigorous physical activity within 48 hours of a slip reduce their relapse rate by nearly 40%. Testosterone levels also play a role, though not in the exaggerated way often claimed online. Short-term abstinence, around 7 days, can produce modest testosterone increases, but single ejaculation events don't dramatically crash levels. What matters more is the stability. Repeated relapses create a spike and crash pattern in hormone regulation that leaves guys feeling inconsistent. The 72-hour protocol breaks that cycle, allowing the hormonal system to stabilize. Advanced tactics for long-term prevention. Once the immediate 72 hours pass, prevention becomes the priority. The brain is adaptable. Neuroplasticity means it can rewire itself with the right inputs, but that adaptability cuts both ways. Without deliberate effort, old patterns reassert themselves. Advanced trigger mapping goes beyond basic identification. A guy doesn't just note that stress triggers relapses, he tracks the exact sequence. Does stress at work lead to phone use that leads to specific apps that lead to relapse? Each link in that chain is a potential intervention point. Blocking one link breaks the chain. This requires weekly reviews, sitting down every Sunday to analyze patterns from the previous 7 days. What worked? What didn't? Where did urges spike? Patterns invisible in the moment become obvious in review. Accountability partners shift the entire dynamic. Shame thrives in isolation. The moment another person knows about the struggle, the psychological weight drops. This doesn't mean broadcasting to everyone. It means one trusted person who checks in twice weekly. External accountability increases success rates by over 50%. The partner doesn't need to be an expert. They just need to ask, "How's this week going? Any close calls?" Meditation apps like Headspace or Calm provide structure for the emotional processing that journaling begins. 10 minutes daily of guided mindfulness rewires the brain's response to urges. Instead of urge to action, the pattern becomes urge, notice, choose. That gap between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. Mindfulness-based relapse prevention shows significant reductions in compulsive behavior after 8 weeks of consistent practice. Nutrition remains critical beyond the first 72 hours. Zinc and magnesium aren't just for acute recovery. They support ongoing testosterone production and nervous system function. A guy serious about long-term retention builds meals around these nutrients. Dark leafy greens, nuts, seeds, lean proteins. Hydration stays elevated. Dehydration amplifies irritability and brain fog, making urges harder to resist. The truth about recovery. Here's the misconception that derails most guys. They expect linear progress. They think day 30 should feel easier than day 15, which should feel easier than day 5. Reality doesn't work that way. Recovery happens in waves. Some days feel effortless. Other days, seemingly out of nowhere, urges return with intensity. This isn't failure, it's biology. The brain periodically tests old pathways to see if they're still needed. Each time a guy resists during these tests, the pathway weakens further. Another myth, ignoring emotional triggers. Many guys focus entirely on external triggers, screens, locations, times of day, while ignoring internal ones like loneliness, anger, or boredom. Advanced recovery means developing emotional literacy. When an urge surfaces, the question isn't just, "What was I doing?" but "What was I feeling?" Addressing the feeling removes the fuel. The protocol works because it respects how the body and brain actually function. It doesn't promise instant superpowers or claim magical benefits from retention that science doesn't support. Instead, it offers something better. A clear, evidence-based system for turning a setback into a setup. The 72-hour window stabilizes brain chemistry. The advanced tactics build resilience over weeks and months. Together, they transform recovery from something that happens to a guy into something he directs. Every guy who implements this protocol won't just bounce back. He'll build a system that makes the next streak stronger than the last. That's not motivation. That's neuroplasticity in action. This week, try this. Within 1 hour of any slip, take a 60-second cold shower and journal 3 specific triggers. No guilt, just data. Identify your patterns, then structure your environment to block them. Phone in another room, gym sessions scheduled, accountability text sent. Drop your recovery win in the comments. Hit like if this protocol resonated. Subscribe for science-backed tactics that actually work. Your next streak starts stronger when you turn setbacks into systems.